blasting, billowing, bursting forth with the power of 10 billion butterfly sneezes.
I'm Tom Bain, and this is Wine, Money, and Song. If you're interested in wines and wanting to find out the best values, please subscribe. I was sitting around and thinking, what goes into your winemaking decisions? How do you decide what wines you go out and you shop for and you look for? Is it things in the press? Is it wine writers? Is there a guy that you go to in your local store and you ask them, what should I pick up for dinner tonight? And a lot goes into this, but I think what's happened in the last 20 years, the role of the wine critic probably is the main mover, especially to people who drink a good amount of wines, regular wine drinkers. They're really steered by their reviews. And I want you to think about wine criticism. And I want you to think about how you think about buying wines and how you come to that final decision. And the next few minutes, I'll try to clarify things for you. So the way that I've always worked at buying wines, the way it always worked with me was I used to read articles, I used to read wine magazines. This was before wine critics, and they would tell me something about the region, about the grape, about the producer, and I would get interested in it. And that's when I was first learning about wine. And there wasn't a lot of, there really wasn't wine critics back then. There were a few people who wrote in magazines, like Good Housekeeping and several other of the lifestyle magazines. Maybe once a month they'd write a little article about a certain area in France and the type of wines they made. But there were no journals, there were no specific wine publications that just did wine. I guess until Parker did, and I'm trying to think, Parker was in 73 or something like that, 1973. And it took a while for him to get traction, but he got popular because of Bordeaux, and it took him years to finally build up his subscribers, but there were some very, very good vintages in the 80s, and the 82 vintage was controversial, and Parker went over the deep end and recommended it and created quite a stir. And part of the success of the 1982 Bordeaux vintage was Parker kept putting helium in it, and a lot of people thought that he was over the top with it. But as I said, in 1983, I went there and I tasted the wines, and I couldn't have agreed with them more. And that was the beginning of a really serious wine criticism. Now, in the Wine Searcher site, I checked their news articles once in a while, and there was an article about wine critics, the producers strike back. And there was this Bordeaux producer who basically either had a conversation or had a long email where he rated all the wine critics who come to review his wines. And he didn't spare any opinion. He just went after it. He liked maybe 3 or 4 of them, and he named them. But in the Wine Searcher article, they refused to name the names because they were afraid of libel laws. And I don't think it's important who the names are, but you have to understand that wine writers and wine critics are in the wine business. They have to make money. And how they make money through subscriptions, and some of them make money from the wine industry where they get free trips and free meals. The free meals, that doesn't bother me too much. And they get free samples, which I believe they should, because they're doing PR for the winery, and that's advertising costs for the wineries. But this article, basically, the producer said, a lot of these guys are not trained on picking up flaws in the wine, technical defects in the wine. And as a wine taster myself, the first thing I look for is defects in the wine. Now, they're far and few in between nowadays with winemaking techniques, but when something pops up, that's a red flag for me. The defect could be oxidative, could be chemical taint, could be mold, unclean winemaking. But those are far and few in between. Or Brettanomycins, whatever they are, that are in some of the wines. But what I want consumers to think about is these are people, they're unique people. Most of them travel and they go to the vineyards and they try the wines. And everyone is subjective. No one is objective. The only objective part of wine criticism is you give the information about the winery, what grapes they use, harvest dates, technical calibrations of the wine, how much acid it has, alcohol. The rest, the tasting, is purely subjective. And they have their own likes and dislikes. And what they like, you might not like at all. And that's something you have to realize, because you look at a rating and you say it's 95. Oh, that's a great wine. It's a great wine. And I've said this before about 100-point wines. Someone's 100-point wine is someone else's 90-point wine. So it's all subjective. And back to the wine critics, you can't base your whole buying process by someone else's opinion. Now, if you follow someone very closely, a writer, and you take a few of their recommendations and you like their recommendations, then I can see following them and trying the wines. But there's going to be times you're not going to like what they like. And that's normal because it's subjective. But what you should be doing and who you should be listening to, you should listen to some of your friends who drink wine. And the best way to learn about wines is to get together with 4 or 5 other people with like minds like you who really want to drink wine. Get together once a month and everyone bring a bottle or two and sit down and try the wines and talk about them. And in the beginning, you feel like you know nothing, but after a while, you'll get some confidence and you realize what you like and what you can learn about the wines together and teach each other. Now, wine critics, they're a bit conspicuous in their ratings, and they're very snobby in certain ways. And I've been in the wine industry for a long time, and it hasn't gone away. It was there in the beginning, and it's only gotten worse, the wine snobbery. And you have the masters of wine, you have the sommeliers, and some of those people are very good, excellent commenters on wine, but there are a lot of them that are full of themselves and they blow smoke up people's butt. And I think it's key that if you're really interested in wine, that you find a local store somewhere who has a good selection and who has a staff who understands those wines and who can talk to you about them and understand what you like, and they can turn you on to that. That is the best source of buying your wines, because they get to know your palate and they can recommend things. And I would say everyone should do that. And I still have people who I go to in the resale end. Even with all my experience, when they tell me, hey, you should try this, it's good, I know that they have credibility and I want to try that wine. As far as myself goes, why should you listen to me? Who the heck am I that I'm going to tell you, hey, you should try this wine? Well, the reason why you should maybe consider listening to some of the things I say. Now, this is my street cred. All right. I spent 7 years in retail working in 2 stores in New York City. And at that time, that was in the 1970s. And wine was new. The wine market was just growing and exploding. And it was an exciting time. Just wines were appealing. And I got into Bordeaux after I was into California Cabernets, Infidels, and Chardonnays. I got into French wines. I got into Spanish wines, German wines. So after working 7 years there, I graduated college also, marketing degree. I worked 4 years at Gallo Wine Distributors, and I learned a lot about sales and marketing at Gallo, the largest winery in the world, and I still haven't forgotten what I've learned there. Then I went to a small fledgling importer, Winebow Imports Inc., and I worked at the ground floor there, and we brought in Sonoma-Cutrer, we brought in wines like Duckhorn, and a bunch of things, and we sold vineyard brands, Robert Haas selections. I worked there for 4 years. Then for 2 decades, I worked for Seagram's Chateau and Estate. And I traveled the vineyards of Europe. I traveled the West Coast, the vineyards, and we imported the lion's share of classified Bordeaux's and really the best Burgundies. So for 2 decades I did that. But besides that, I was a wine educator. I taught classes at Seagram's for some of the employees. I was a lecturer on wine. Besides, and I said I traveled to Europe, visited producers all over Europe and the West Coast. And several times I attended the University of Davis, where they had special wine seminars on winemaking, the chemistry in winemaking, wine appreciation. I went out there and I spent 3 or 4 days there doing the seminars, and I was always feeding my mind and my knowledge. And I'm a wine collector. I've spent a good amount of my early age income on buying wines. I didn't go to the Bahamas much. I didn't have vacations. Whenever I would travel, it would be going to vineyards and I'd be working. And I was lucky enough, my company paid for many of these trips, but some of them were on me. But the key thing, besides being a wine collector, I'm a wine drinker. And it's my passion, and tens and tens and tens of thousands of wines I've had. And I'm trying to bring that experience to you and to help make you think and learn to trust your own palate. And if I can do that one thing, then Wine Money and Song will be a big success.